Okay, welcome to Module 5 of the Vwap Wave System course updated for 2025. And now we're going to start diving into some of the more advanced material, particularly some material that hasn't been included in prior courses. So I'm really excited to add in this information. So we're going to dive into Module 5 Advanced Playbook Setups. And I should give a little disclosure on this. If you haven't mastered the core 4 setups, you should not be trading the advanced setups yet, but I'd like to introduce you to them nevertheless. So expanding the playbook, the 4 core setups give us structure, okay? But these advanced plays, these give us precision and additional opportunities throughout the trading session. Okay, so as you master the core 4, this will create additional opportunities and give us a chance to even finish our trading sooner than later if we trade for limited hours. They're based on contextual cues and subtle structure tells. Again, these aren't guesses. These are still high probability reactions to price behavior that we see daily. Setup A. We're going to dive into the VWAP point of control scalps while we're in balance. What is it? This is a scalp setup that triggers when price reclaims VWAP or point of control inside of a balanced structure. The big difference here is that we trade VWAP or point of control from the center of value when we expect price to rotate back toward the opposite edge. So as opposed to the fade value or extremes where we trade the edge of value back to point of control, this would be the center out to the edge. When to use it? All right, when the market is clearly balanced, price remains inside the 1 standard deviation bands for time and distance. VWAP and point of control overlap or are close, so we have a point of control on a high volume node and the VWAP pretty close to each other. No directional conviction, we're just seeing lots of rotation. And price leaves VWAP point of control temporarily and then reclaims back or back tests and holds. Okay, so those are kind of 2 different ways to trade it. All right, we get the trap where it breaks and reclaims, or we break and then back test and go. All right, those are the 2 different ways of trading it. Entry criteria. All right, we enter long on reclaim the VWAP point of control after shallow downside probe. Okay, so that would be the sub VWAP trap, or we break and back test and continue long. All right, so we're coming from underneath, we break VWAP, back test, and long. The short would be a reclaim from below. Okay, so we break above VWAP, and then we reclaim to the downside. And then the alternate setup would be coming from the upper band to VWAP, we break VWAP, we back test, hold, and then we short to the lower band. This is what it looks like. Okay, so this is value area high or upper band. All right, we break, we sub VWAP trap, we reclaim, and then the long back to upper band. This second one, same setup, just the inverse. So we're coming from lower band. We break above VWAP, we trap, we reclaim below it, and then the short is to the downside. Okay, and this is the alternate setup. We're coming from lower band, we break, back test, and hold, and we long to the upper band. Okay, so these are all scalps. Stops and targets. We have generally tight stops on these just beyond the opposite side of the reclaim candle or a low volume node if that matches up. And our target will be the value area edge, right? So that band in the direction we're trading. There are some nuances. This works best when price pokes into a low volume node and snaps back. And this is ideal during slower midday hours or even the Globex balance sessions over the overnight session. Size down and execute fast. This is a scalp, not a trend trade. All right, we're not looking for big moves here. All right, that is emphasized. Let's dive into setup B, the late entry continuation play. All right, what is this? This is a trend following entry after the breakout has already occurred. So this is on a big trending day. We're already spending significant time outside of the VWAP bands even so much, in fact, that we're probably not even touching the upper band, right? So this lets you join the move without chasing the extremes, right? Buying the top. When to use it, trend day is confirmed, price broke above initial balance and holds outside. Vwap, our first deviation band, has been respected the entire day, and we're trading above that band or below it. And oftentimes, price is developing a new distribution or micro balance mid-session well above the Vwap value area and initial balance. All right, that's showing that we're really holding, and now we're discovering a new value area much further from the open. The entry criteria, we tried to enter on the base of a developing distribution or on the break and back test of an initial balance extension. And we'll take a look at both of those entries. All right, so here is a distribution that is formed later in the day. All right, we try and long at the base, which also happens to be an IB 50% extension. All right, so we broke above, and then we back tested, and then you could have caught this long up back to point of control. All right, already pretty close to a traditional price discovery long, but didn't quite get there. So this would be a good reason to get in late and still not even get to the band. Same long here, same long here. Okay, so, and these occur on the higher extensions like this one up here. This is the 100% extension. So one whole initial balance, again, higher, break through this, back test up, or the back break of the 50% up, or looking for a big distribution and then longing the bottom of this structure. All right, for a return to VWAP, point of control, and then the other side of the distribution right here. Okay, again, scalp trades. Stops and targets, we want the stop to be just below the structure or the distribution, the high volume node, or the last swing high-low candle. Our target is going to be that point of control, the peak of the distribution, or the other side of value on the new distributing distribution. So, right, if this is our distribution here, this big high volume node, we long down here, point of control, other side. Okay. Additionally, we could shoot for the next IB extension. We never got there. All right, we never broke out of this distribution structure on this particular chart, but it could. Nuances, these scalp trades can have tight ranges, right? So this is pretty tight, guys. This is a 20-point range on ES. Depending on size of new developing distribution, like I just showed you. It's important to wait for continuing strength on entry as trend resumes. You don't want to get caught in a flush or a sweep. All right, we have probably a lot of stops, a lot of trailing stops as we move up. So they're looking to, stop out a lot of the longs that have been in this for a while. Okay, so you got to be careful of those. Let's dive into setup C. This is the inside HT, that's higher time frame balance fades. All right, this is a good one. We trade this a lot on stream and in the room. What is it? The market is coiled inside a much larger composite balance. So a multi-day or a prior day's value area on the volume profile. All right, we could also use the weekly or the monthly VWAP band value areas for higher time zone value areas on the VWAP. So the weekly and the monthly, and I'll show you examples of this. And we'll fade the tests of these outer edges on the much higher time frame, expecting that range to hold. We use it when today's session, the session we're currently in, is inside a higher time frame value area or a multi-day profile area. That's when we combine a couple of days into one big distribution. Price using the range profile. Price tests the edge of the balance and then shows rejection. All right, so we take the fade. And then we have no initiative volume pushing into price discovery, clear rejection. The entry criteria would be we'll get in on a rejection wick or reclaim of the edge, okay, of the value area high, value area low on the higher time frame. And this works well with a low volume node rejection or point of control acting as a pivot, all right, so from a prior day. So here's some good examples, all right, so this is a distribution that was created on this day, and this is the value area high and the value area low of this day. You could see 2 days later, we tested the value area high of this day almost to the tick before we got the big reversal. All right, so this would have been a great area to go short. Okay, down here, we had this value area high, value area low for this session. All right, and we pretty much tested this one pretty closely on the S&P. All right, and then let's look at this chart. This is the value area high, value area low of this session. And the next day, we pretty much held that same value area. All right, so we were in yesterday's distribution. We stayed there pretty much the entire session. You could have faded the high too pretty closely. All right, interesting stuff. Here is the other way of trading this. So this is the longer term VWAP bands. The green and purple is a weekly VWAP, anchored VWAP. So it's anchored to the beginning of the week. So 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday. And then the orange and blue, you can only see the upper band, the lower band so far away you can't see it, is anchored to the first trading session of the month. Okay, so these are much longer term VWAP bands, and these are often highly respected. And you on the higher time charts, this is a 30-minute chart, and you can catch some really big moves off of these. But on this, the end of the week VWAP bands on the week right here were strong support. We traded back to VWAP on the week, broke above, back tested, went up to monthly, broke, found support. Okay, we have price discovery continuations on the higher time frame here, right here, VWAP bounce here, broke above, we faded. Now we got all the way up to the upper band on the month, and look at here, we faded it, could have faded it twice. Powerful areas. All right, back down to VWAP on the week, held, broke through all of these areas, back tested, probably another back test here. Okay, VWAP bounce. All right, and then the short of VWAP. So these setups are taking place on these longer term time frames as well. So the stops and targets. All right, the stop is going to be just beyond the edge of the higher time frame value area, or well outside the weekly and monthly VWAP area. Since these are higher time frames, you can't trade these as tightly as the day trades or the lower time frame. They tend to be more areas, so you got to be a little more careful, but they work really, really well, especially with confluence. The target is going to be the higher time frame point of control if you could hold that long. I would probably be more looking at the lower time frame chart, the 5-minute, what typical targets we'll have there. The opposite edge of the range for runners. Nuances. All right, these can wind up being much larger moves to grab due to the higher time frame nature of it, being on the 30-minute or the hourly. We use higher time frame session volume profile or composite volume profile to map these edges. Okay, so you can combine multiple days with a range profile. Don't force this on trend days. All right, only inside clean known previous balance areas. You'll get run over. And there's also a price discovery continuation version of this on the monthly and weekly VWAP, and I actually showed that here. Here's one. This would have been one too, right here. VWAP bounce. All right, so there's that other side, not just the fades, but the price discovery versions of this. More so on the VWAPs than the volume profile, but that does provide good context on the higher time frame that we are in price discovery, not so much a setup. The nuances, this can wind up being much larger moves. Oh, I went over this. Let's go into setup D. Okay, IB extension fades. This is our fourth advanced setup, and this will be our last. All right, what is it? Most days break one side of the initial balance, and we can expect to visit one of these extensions. When that breakout holds, we can expect a fade of the next IB extension level, at least for a scalp before it continues on. Right? So with these, I'm looking for a reaction to the extension. I'm not looking for a big move back. When do we use it? When price breaks initial balance and then visits that 50%, 100, 150%, or even 200% extension, then stalls and rejects, at least for a reaction. VWAP remains somewhat flat or inside the initial balance. And order flow dries up or reverses aggressively near the extension zone. So I'm listening to order flow and seeing how price reacts when we get to these areas. What's the entry criteria? Enter on rejection or just above the 50% or full IB extension, or scale in at that area per the hyperscalping. Use failed breakout candle or rejection, and then reclaim of the initial balance line as a trigger. Okay, so we break above it, come back down, or we break below it and come back up. All right, so this would be a break and reclaim right here of the 50% mark. So again, this is the S&P. This is the 50% extension. We broke. We might have even held it for a little bit. Can't really tell on the 5-minute, but it's very possible. We broke and reclaimed. All right, then we go long all the way back to IB low. All right, we did it again here. Broke, reclaimed. Broke, reclaimed. Broke, failed. Reclaimed, broke. So we had a couple good, this is pretty much a value area, and price discovery got rejected here. All right, eventually we did go further south, and we had the same exact setup on the 100% extension right here. All right, we broke and reclaimed, back tested, back up to 50%. All right, this time we broke, back tested further south. All right, so these are the reactions and the moves that we're looking at and watching. Stops and targets just above or below the failed extension, high or low, so the top of that candle or below it. And the target, we can try and scalp it, all right, for the reaction, or we can actually try to go back to the recent level. So like this one, we went from 50% back to IB low. All right, same here, same here. All right, so you can try and scalp it, grab the move from level to level. It doesn't always go that far, but that would be if you're going for bigger moves. Nuances, these setups are clean on days with light data or midweek rotation. All right, if we're having huge news and we're ripping, all right, I would be a little careful with these. You're trading structure, not always speed. So let the fade try to confirm a bit with the order flow shift. Look for some trap candles. All right, wait for buyers or sellers to step in the opposite direction. All right, or if you're hyper scalping, you can scale in around the area and try and get out as soon as in profit. And we'll go over that strategy in my execution section. So the summary, this is your tactical edge. These setups reward traders who understand structure first. All right, the Vwap point of control scalp. This is the value center to the outer value edge. Late entry, second chance to join the trend. Scalp that direction. Inside balance fade, higher time frame fades and longs. Initial balance extension fade, range reversion or exhaustion on a move. And these aren't really signals, guys. These are just reactions to price based on the auction, telling us where it wants to go. All right. So, by watching price, you're going to see all of these setups play out each and every day. All right. So these adds to our toolbox of additional setups. So in total, there is 8 in the Vwap wave system, which is exciting. All right, we do have our 4 core setups. We have our advanced setups for a total of 8 setups. And even in this inside balance fade, this is kind of 2 different setups in itself. Same thing with the point of control scalp. We have the break and reclaim, and then we have the break and retest. Up next, all right, this is an exciting module I'm looking forward to getting into. It's going to be about execution, scaling, and trade management. All right, now you have all of the setups. You know them all. They've been explained. You've been given what they are, when to use them, when to use the stop, when to target profits. So in module 6, we're going to cover how to actually get in, how to size up and manage trades like a professional. All right, we're going to be focusing on trade entry precision, execution, scaling strategies that'll help you reduce risk and maximize your profits and payouts, and a stop logic based on auction behavior, not guesswork. Okay. So looking forward to seeing you all in the next module, and I'll see you there.